Hello, hello, good evening. Um, Here I am again on a Tuesday night live. If you are here watching live, say hello in the chat. I appreciate you joining me. If you are watching on the replay, I appreciate you as well. You are also welcome to say hello in the chat. So, what are we talking about today? Well, if you are a Gen Xer like me, or maybe even an elder millennial, you might find yourself in a place where you are trying to balance teaching your children to be financially literate, but also trying to help your parents navigate their finances in a way that like keeps them independent as they age, but also doesn't bankrupt you. So if that if that's where you are in life, tonight's video is for you. My name is Adelia Aborashade, aka Picky Girl Travels the World. I am a money coach and I am one of the co-founders of Reclaim the Retreat. Um, 10 years ago, actually this week, I really earned the moniker picky girl because I got real picky about how I was living my life. I made some big changes, and here I am now living and thriving in Mexico City, helping other women live life on their terms. On this channel, I talk about the life that I live, the work that I do, empowering women to take control of their finances and their futures. So, if any of that sounds of interest to you, you should subscribe to this channel. Please subscribe. It doesn't just help me and the channel's visibility. By you clicking the subscribe video, by you clicking the like button, you are telling YouTube that you like my content and that they should be sending more of it to your feed. So, hello, everybody in the chat. I see y'all. Buenas noches. I just started Spanish class yesterday. I have not had a formal Spanish class in 2 years. So we're gonna see if it's like riding a bike or not. So welcome to everybody who is joining us tonight. A special welcome to the folks who this might be their first time here. All right. Um, I'm gonna I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about the proverbial elephant in the room. This tonight's video is for the folks that need to talk to young people in their life about money, and the folks that need to talk to some older folks in their life about money. And the proverbial elephant in the room is that talking about money can be uncomfortable. It can be. So if that's how you've been feeling, you shouldn't feel bad about that because it's not a super comfortable topic for almost anybody. But avoiding those conversations, not talking about money, that is not an option. It really isn't, because the people who don't talk about it end up getting bit in the butt in the end. Okay, so we're removing not talking about money even as an option for us. And I know that a lot of you might not feel equipped to have these conversations, whether they be with your children or young people in your family or with your parents. Particularly, let's say your parents didn't do the greatest job talking about money, helping you develop a healthy money mindset and a healthy money story. So if they they kind of got you off to a bad start, it is going to be that much more difficult for you to have a conversation with them. However, we can do hard things. Just because something is hard doesn't mean we can't do it. So keep that in mind. Um, I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that the conversations you're going to have with those different parts of your family are going to be different because they have different purposes. Talking to your children, and it doesn't matter if your children are 5, 15, or 25. Okay, you're the conversations you're going to have with them about money is your is one of education. You want them to know better so they can do better. Don't let whatever shame you have from your own financial mistakes, financial situations. Don't let shame that you've been carrying with you since you were young, don't let that get in the way. This is still a conversation that needs to be had. Um, Pamela just said, talking about money can be so taboo, but we have to demystify it. Exactly that. Because we want better, particularly those of us that didn't have the greatest start in this area. We want better for our kids than we had. And so if that means we have to be a little bit uncomfortable, so be it. Okay. Depending on the age of your kids, um, how you approach the conversation might vary. With younger kids, I think it includes things and can start with something as simply as y'all are going to the library and picking out reading material. Like if you're one of those parents and y'all are like, it's a big treat to go to the bookstore, is to find books that talk about various aspects of money. And I'm not talking about some like dry nonfiction type book. If they are young, there are storybooks that talk about, I cannot remember the name of one now, but this bunny who was trying to save up money to buy this thing he wanted. So just like you buy your kids books with little brown and black children in them, with kids that have kinky hair so that they can see themselves reflected, it's also a good idea that you choose books that talk about, various aspects of money, finances, spending, what have you, that are age appropriate. Um, if your child is a little older, it might be tempting to like try and find, let's not make the mistake that a lot of parents make when it is the sex talk and they're uncomfortable. And so they go and they find a book that they feel like explains everything. They hand the kid the book and be like, let me know if you have any questions. Don't do that with the money talk. Okay. Don't just hand them a book and expect that to be it. Um, and like I said, particularly with older folks, I mean, like older kids. And I know part of the impulse to doing that comes from a lack of certainty in our own knowledge. And I would say that that's actually an opportunity that y'all can learn together because I think as adults, we often feel like we have to be experts on everything. And in order to maintain our image with our children, we can't be seen as not knowing something. If you've got a teenager who's asking you about investing, and maybe you don't really know that much, maybe this is where y'all learn together. You try and find a couple of books, have them get on YouTube and see what they can find, and y'all can compare and share. It can be a joint learning experience, but also I think as parents with our kids, it's important to be transparent as possible. Because think back to when you were their age and your parents would say things like, well, because, or, like shoo you off, like, don't ask me about that, stay out of grown folks' business. Did that benefit you? Or did that leave gaps in your financial knowledge that you ended up paying for through mistakes that could have been avoided? Okay. Um, so when it comes to kids, and I don't care if, like I said, the kids are 5, 10 years old, if they're 15, if they're 25, I think what's important there is that you share what you're doing. Um, like one of the earliest memories I have is on weekends, my mother would sit down with her checkbook and the check register and the various bills and write them out. And so I went and asked, I was like, what are you doing? And she was explaining to me, like, this is how I keep the lights on. This is how I keep us in a place to live. So I understood, like, oh, like that stuff isn't magic. This is how that happens. And you've got to keep track of how much is going out versus how much is coming. So I think it's important to model that with our kids. When you are at the store buying something, talk about with them like, oh, I'm choosing to pay for this in cash because of this reason, or I'm going to use my debit card because of this, or I'm putting this on the credit card, but my intention is to pay it back. Talk about what a credit card is, the fact that it's a loan, and that there may be security reasons that you're opting to use this credit card, or you're earning points. Like, it doesn't, it shouldn't be a secret what you're doing. I've talked to parents. Now, this is not something I ever did. I probably should have. There are parents who budget and actually sit down with their kid and they're like, hey, this is how much money me and I made this month, me and your dad made this month, me and your mom made this month. And these are all the things we need to pay for. How would you divide up this money? Because again, you don't know what you don't know. And so we've all grown up and known that these are not things they're probably going to pick up in school. So we've got to like actively make a point to involve them in as much of our finances as we are comfortable with, because we want them to know how money works. We want them to know how credit cards work. We want them to know how, like, car loans, that like they don't just hand out free cars, that if you don't have the money, a big chunk of cash to go buy a new car, you've got to get out a loan. But like, kids don't pick up this stuff through osmosis. Somebody's got to tell them. And as a parent, that is one of our responsibilities. Um, you know, when they get money for their birthday, for holidays, um, if you're giving them an allowance, if they have a job, however, don't just, it's, as parents, it's very easy for us to be like, well, just save your money or just let them do whatever with their money. But neither of those options are probably setting them up for optimal success when it comes to managing their money later on down the road. So, work with them to have a plan for how they're going to spend their money. Like, what are some of the goals that they have financially? Like, are they trying to save up for, I don't know what kids are saving up for now. Is it a trip through the school they're trying to save up for? Is it a game, a toy? Is it some clothing? Talk to help them say, okay, you just got $100 from grandma. You said you wanted a new game. I don't know, a Nintendo or whatever, how much of that $100 grandma gave you are you going to put toward that goal? How much are you going to put toward, charity, mutual aid? How much of that are you putting aside just to have fun with? You know, you don't have to call it budgeting, but having those conversations with them about how they plan to spend their money is important. Um, I will tell you that there were some things my mom did a great job with that helped me from a financial standpoint. And there were some things she really messed up on, like when I know it is often much easier to go grocery shopping without kids tagging along. However, one of the ways that I learned how to shop well and get good deals is because in the grocery store, my mother would point out to me the difference between, generic house brands, the name brands on the price tags on the shelf. She'd show me where there's the price for the total package and the unit price, and how that's how you can figure out more evenly when you're trying to compare things. Having those kinds of conversations with kids are important. Um, Talking to them about how, because I know some people are like, I don't need my kid knowing how much I make. That is your right. But, the flip side of that is have a conversation with them about, or talk, not just a single conversation, an ongoing conversation about how much can you pay for college? Are you still paying your college loans? Because your kid probably doesn't understand that. They just know, oh, I'm supposed to go to college. That's what people do. They maybe hear people talk about how expensive it is. You've been paying for everything else in their life. Maybe they're assuming you're going to pay for college as well. This is one of those places where my mama screwed me over. At no point did this woman who had no money to pay for my college ever bother to tell me that. And so here I am applying here, applying there, assuming she's going to pay for it just like she's been paying for my high school tuition. And old girl didn't have any money and didn't think to have that conversation with me. And so that is a conversation I made sure I had with my children about, like, this is how much I have to put towards your education. Um, and we explored various education options and talked about how we could meet, handle the gap between how much money we had versus how much it costs. And so the most important thing, I think, when you're having those tough money conversations with your kids is to be open and to be as transparent and to talk about, kind of like a think aloud. These are things that you may take for granted, but if you think about it, how did you learn that? Did you just learn it by fumbling and stumbling? Would it have been easier had somebody talked to you about those things? That's my big recommendation for kids. Um, Having a dialogue with them is important, and it continues to be important even as they become adults. Because we don't know how much time we have. If something were to happen to you, you were to get sick, you were to get injured, you were to die, do your children know, like, what to do with the money they might inherit from you? Again, that's part of the dialogue. Desiree mentioned Morgan Manages Her Money is a good picture book. I love that. ABCs of Negotiating is a good one for teens and adults. Um, I will tell you, I have recommendations for books for older, like maybe like 12 and up. Although I saw lots of good, like, picture books, story books about money for kids, for younger kids, for older kids. a lot of what I saw being recommended are not books that I would recommend. But ones that I do recommend, uh, particularly somebody like around 11, 12, 13, 14, How to Money, Your Ultimate Visual Guides of the Basics. It like breaks down kind of like all of the money stuff that you're trying to figure out when you're young. I'm gonna drop that in the chat. Um, I think this is a good book. Just drop that. How to Money, Your Ultimate Visual Guide to the Basics of Finance by Catherine Tuggle. Um, Older folks, particularly like high school age, college age, I think Your Money or Your Life is a good read. And I think everybody at some point in their life, maybe late high school, early college, should read Your Money or Your Life and The Psychology of Money. I think those are really, and they're not necessarily books about like this is how to build an investment portfolio, but they are good books for kind of setting the foundation of a healthy money mindset. So I said tonight we're going to talk about how to have those tough uh, those tough money conversations. We've talked about how to talk to your kids. Now, again, you are a part of the sandwich generation and you find yourself raising children, but also trying to raise some parents. This part is particularly for you um, because, you know, folks ain't set up like the way they used to be. And so it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what your age is or how old your parents are. Because death can show up for somebody at any point. This is not a conversation. These are not conversations that should just happen when your parents become elderly. Actually, these are conversations that should start as soon as possible. Um, Now, with your kids, the conversation there is more one about like teaching and instilling knowledge. The conversation you should be having, or the conversations you should be having with your parents, are more about you being able to get a good picture of their financial situation and what gaps happen to exist. Because as their child, it's probably going to be your responsibility to figure out how to fill in those gaps. Um, so, you know, nobody wants to have this. I don't think most people want to have this conversation with their parents, but it doesn't mean that it's not necessary. If you are fortunate enough to have siblings, recruit them. This doesn't just have to be a conversation that is on your back. And honestly, everybody needs to have a vested stake in your parent or parent's situation and needs to understand what is going on. Um, Now, I'm not going to lie. These conversations with your parent or parents are likely going to be uncomfortable, particularly if your parent didn't do the greatest job helping you with your financial literacy, or if y'all have got a particularly strained relationship. But again, just because the conversation's going to be awkward and uncomfortable doesn't mean that you don't have it. Because again, the sooner you start having these conversations, the better. Now, if you think about it from your parents' point of view, here comes their child trying to get in their business about what they're doing with their money. Okay. So keep that in mind. You're going to want to approach this slowly and take small steps. Um, and then build up. Don't just be like, Mom, we need to sit down and we need to talk about what's going on with your investments, because that is going to raise her hackles. That is going to put her on the defensive. And that is not what you want to do. Um, keep in mind, and you also want to communicate this in the most appropriate way, that this is not about judging your parents' financial decisions. Okay. I mean, I guess you can judge them, but say that for when you're at home and alone. Don't judge their choices in front of them. This won't go well if that's what you do. Okay. Um, it's more important because, again, our focus here is for you to understand what's going on with them, not for you to show up and be like, well, I'm going to be the boss of you and I'm going to tell you what to do, because they're not going to be receptive to that. Start by asking questions, because that's really what you want to know is what's happening, what plans are in place, before you show up saying, well, this is what you should do, this is you need to stop doing. um, some advice is maybe start with a story about someone you know who got involved in their parents' finances, highlight the benefits of, like being prepared for problems that the family encountered because they hadn't had that many money talks before. That might be like how you open the door to this conversation with your parents. Another way you can kind of open that door might be to approach it as asking your parent for advice with a financial issue that you're facing. Their response, say, hey, like this is what's going on with me. What do you think? Get some feedback from them. And how they respond is going to give you clues about the financial planning that they've done or that they've not done. Keep the conversation going by asking more questions about, like, oh, like, so is that what you did? So on and so forth, to get them talking. Because I mean, you're trying to ease into this conversation. You don't want to be like, hey, we finna have a come to Jesus moment, because again, that's gonna put them on guard and that's not what you want. Or if you don't think either of those approaches will work with your parent, maybe ask like a what if scenario. So, like, how, like, you would pose to them, like, if you were to be in the hospital, how would I go about making sure that your bills stay paid? Giving them various scenarios, so that they can give you the answers, but again, based on the answers they give you, you can kind of tell whether or not there has been planning done or there hasn't been planning done. Um, and, if they're like, oh, maybe you posing this question to them then points out, like, oh, no, there wouldn't be a way for you to make sure that the mortgage on my house gets paid, that sort of thing, because you can't access my bank account, or I don't have a power of attorney, that kind of stuff. Um, and so, you want to open the door just a little bit to get the conversation going, to, not step on anybody's toes, keep everybody comfortable. But ultimately, the things that you need to talk to your parents about, you need to understand what they have in place. Um, you know, a will. Do they have a will? Do they have an estate plan? Do they have a trust? You know, so first level is, do they have any of those things? If they do, um, where are the copies? Who has copies? Is it filed with the county? That kind of stuff. What is their overall debt situation? Halisi was on the channel, what was that, Friday, and was talking about the property that she'd bought for her mom, that her mom had gotten a reverse mortgage on. And so then they had to kind of like remedy that situation. So understanding what your parents' debt situation is important. That doesn't mean that you're on the hook for their debts, but you need that portion of the bigger picture. Um, Third, you want to know about investments they have for retirement. Like when they can't work anymore or when they choose not to work anymore, what source of income do they have or are they planning to have? This was not, I was young. My mother retired when she was 52. She decided that. That meant I was early 20s. And I assumed if she made the decision to retire at 52, she must have figured out how she was going to support herself. Turns out that was not the case. She did not have any kind of plan at all. And I was blindsided by that because we had not had these conversations. So, you want to know what's going on with a will, an estate plan, that sort of thing. What is their overall debt situation? Um, what investments are there for retirement? Is there a pension? Uh, you know, have they thought about when they will apply for Social Security? Is there any life insurance? Maybe term life insurance? Because often people take out term life insurance policies when they have minor children. Um, and depending, do they get a 40-year policy, a 30-year policy, a 20-year policy? They may be at an age where that policy is not going to pay out because they're outside of it, finding out, is there life insurance? Now, it might get a little uncomfortable if you ask them, well, who's the beneficiary? Because that's their business. But, the more important thing is that a beneficiary has been named on those policies if they exist. Um, you know, uh, do they have a plan or what are their desires when it comes to aging in place at home, assisted living? I know this can be a little uncomfortable because some folks feel like, oh, y'all just trying to put me in a home as soon as you can. But there are folks who, living in the house that they had raised their children in, and they no longer have children at home, you know, sometimes they want to downsize because that's too much house for them. Maybe they want to be in community with other people in their age group. So that might mean relocating to like a retirement community. Um, but it is important to know, what is it that they want? Is it that they want to age in place at their home? Okay, so what does that then raises questions, particularly if it's a house that needs lots of repairs or a house that isn't very accessible. You know, are there funds? Is there a plan for funds to make those upgrades, or would it make sense to sell the existing home and move into a place that was more compatible with the desire to age in place? So that's why that's part of the conversation. You know, if your parents are over 60, might be prudent to have a conversation about long-term care insurance, or, how they feel about, because long-term care insurance is intended to pay for care, like if they have to go to a nursing home or something like that, because none of the other insurance they have is gonna pay for that. And some people don't want the money that they worked their entire life for and they invested that money to be used to pay for their long-term care versus going to their heirs. And so that's a conversation to have. Um, Now, I have my personal I have my personal suspicions about long-term care insurance, because I see insurance companies every day not wanting to pay for things that they've insured. So I'm I'm curious as to how that's going to actually pan out, given that boomers, this huge, huge group of people are in retirement and lots of them are going to need long-term care. I do wonder if those companies are going to pay out. If anybody here or anybody watching this in the future has experience with long-term care insurance that actually paid, I'd love to hear from you because like I said, that's my own personal concern. I can share with y'all that if my mama didn't have a plan for how she was going to support herself when she retired at 52, she absolutely did not have a plan for what would happen when she had a stroke at 50, 59. 57, 59, she had a stroke and could not go back to living by herself. I, as y'all know, was a public school teacher to a postman. We did not have the thousands of dollars to pay a nursing home. And so she had to go on Medicaid. She got disability, but we needed Medicaid to pay to get us a lower rate on the nursing home. And basically, it took her entire disability check. So she basically had to be destitute in order to get Medicaid to pay for her nursing home. So having conversations about, like, okay, how are we going to pay for this if this becomes a reality? That's really important. And those of you that have siblings, I did not, I was just me. It might be more affordable if there are multiple family members that can contribute. Or maybe, your parents are okay with what money they do have being used for that. I don't know, but that's why we want to have those conversations. That's why we want to have those conversations. Um, and then, you always want to talk to your parents about, like, protecting financial information, identity theft. What was it? A few weeks ago, I did a video talking about how to protect your financial information. And one of my pieces of advice for you was both for minor children and elderly parents to go ahead and freeze their credit to help with this. You know, Another thing that Halisi has talked about before on her channel, as well as when she was here a few months ago, about having to be on her mom's accounts so that when people tried to scam her, she could be as a added safety valve there to prevent that. So let's see. I tried to have this conversation with my mom several times, but she refuses to be honest with me, her only child. I have given up and will let the chips fall where they may. And your experience is not unique. I have heard from a lot of folks that, like, in a family situation where there has been someone who became ill and wasn't in a position to, like, handle their finances, that kind of stuff. There are other family members who didn't see the mess that created and then found themselves in a similar situation. All you can do is all you can do. We want these conversations to happen. You have attempted to have this conversation, but all you can do is all you can do. So, still trying to work with my brother on this. It's hard to get mom to want to spend the money to organize a trust. Um, I empathize. Um, you know, not necessarily your situation, Desiree, but if somebody else, if you're watching this and, most of us know who our parents' favorite child is. If you're not having a lot of success and you're not the favorite child, I was not. um, this might be the time that you make that favorite do a little bit of this work, because the parent might be a little bit more receptive, if it's coming from them, you know. That's just a thought. That's just a thought. Um, Books that I recommend are for older young people. Uh, What Money Does, I think is the name of it. No, How to Money. How to Money by Karen Tuggle. Your Money or Your Life, that's a little older, like high school and up. And Psychology of Money, again, high school and up. Psychology of Money, that's a book that somebody's got to have like interest in finances, because some of the examples he gives might like go over their head. But I think any adult who is out here needs to read that, uh needs to read that book. So, um that those are my tips and suggestions for how to have those difficult money talks with your family. Hopefully I empathize with the folks who are having difficulty with parents. I can tell you in my situation, I didn't have these conversations with my mother. It was hard for me to have any conversation with her. But, once she had the stroke, that's when I realized there were things I should know, but she suffered a great deal of damage from her stroke, so I was not able to get answers, and so I just kinda had to figure out some things and make the best choices I could given the information. So, those of you that are running into parents who are a little less than cooperative, you know, pat yourself on the back for trying and making the effort and doing what you could, but also don't beat yourself up because you can't make this person have the conversation with you. If you don't have your own children, but you're in a family where there are young people, I think everything we shared here tonight is applicable for nieces, nephews, play cousins, and all of them, because maybe their parents aren't having those conversations, but somebody absolutely should be having those conversations with them. Okay? That is all we have for tonight. If you know someone for whom this conversation would be useful, please share the video with them. If you want more of this kind of content to your feed, make sure you subscribe. You can hit the like button, and why not even turn on notifications so that you'll be notified the next time I either go live or upload a new video. Good night, everybody.